The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Don't have to pledge allegiance or stand in line. No ticket to buy, no paper to sign. You found it. This is the place.
Well, greetings one and all. This is the place, and this is your host, the Monty Man, with a very special broadcast this week from the best of Take 12 Recovery Radio. What a treat. What a great share you are about to witness with my friend and one of the most downloaded circuit speakers in the world of the 12 steps, Mr. Chris S. I've entitled this The Face-Eating Demon, and I think you'll know why very, very soon. So without further ado, here's Chris.
My name is Chris. I am an alcoholic. On or around December 28th, 1989, the grace of God separated me from alcohol, and that was a good thing, not only for myself, but for anybody in the same town as I was in. It was absolutely a brutal detox. I remember getting to a point of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. It talks about that jumping off place in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, where we can no longer see ourselves living or dying, drinking or not drinking. It just looks like there's just nothing, there's just no future. And I was at that point, and I had done some things that I'll talk about later that were very disturbing to me. And I just made a decision, I just can't drink anymore. And I started to detox. And I remember for about 3 days, I was flopping around on the living room floor, detoxing. I was hallucinating. My pulse rate was like 2,000 over 2 million. There was animals running around the floor. There was bigger animals scraping on the house to try to get in. And a demon came out of the ceiling. I remember laying on the couch and looking up, and this big demon comes down the ceiling to eat my face. Okay? And I remember just screaming out, "God help me!" And the demon disappeared, which was a good thing. And the minute I could, I got out of the house and went back to AA, which I had tried and didn't work. But again, it was a willingness born out of desperation. I want to start my story in an early point. I've written a lot of inventory over the years, and one of the additional exercises that I was asked to do when I was doing a fear inventory was not only list the fear and why you have the fear, but list the first time in your life you can remember having that fear. List the first realization of that fear in your life. And I had fear of a social situation or whatever, and I thought back and I remembered back the first time I was afraid, or I had that anxiety that we have, that self-centered fear. And it was when my mother was dropping me off to kindergarten, okay? I'm 5 years old. She throws me in the car. She drives me across town. She opens up the door and she goes, "There's the kindergarten classroom. See you later," and kicks me out of the car. I'm like 5 years old. I hadn't gotten out much. Hadn't been on my own very often. You know what I mean? And I remember standing up on the hill looking down at the kindergarten. And the kids are playing. They already know each other. You know how that is. They're like playing kickball and tag, and they're friends already. And I'm looking down and I'm saying, "Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't do this. What if they don't like me? What if I say something stupid? You know, what if they make fun of me? I mean, I had all these fears. I'm thinking all these thoughts about, negative consequences of going. And for the first time that I can remember, I acted as if everything was okay inside of me. And I walked down there and I did the kindergarten thing. But I was totally uncomfortable with myself. I had this anxiety, this worry, this self-centered fear. They talk about it in the book, The Bondage of Self. And I went ahead and I did the kindergarten thing. And I was going through school. And, I never felt like it was in the right place with the right people doing the right thing. It was just never working for me. And I think around 7th grade or something like that, I decided with some friends of mine that we were going to cut school and go back to my house and drink. None of us had ever done this before. It was like we were going to be bad kids, It was very, very cool. And so we did that. We all cut school. We went back to my house, and nobody was home. They were at work. So I remember grabbing a bottle of Four Roses whiskey off the shelf. And, there was no one in my family that was really hard liquor drinkers. They would get them as presents or whatever. This thing had been sitting up there for I don't know how long. I had to blow the dust off of it. Mainly beer drinkers in my house. But I brought it down. I didn't know anything about drinking. I'm 6 years old. I don't know anything about drinking. But I remember watching the John Wayne movies. Peter was talking about John Wayne, the man's man. Remember the John Wayne movies? He would bust into the saloon. He'd go up to the bartender. He'd go, "Bartender, whiskey." And the bartender would take out the bottle of whiskey and pour a big glass of whiskey. And John would just drink the whole thing down, grab the bottle out of the bartender's hand, and go down and sit at the table until he had to shoot somebody or something, right? And he'd just sit there and he'd drink. So, okay, that's how you drink. So I took out 3 water glasses and I filled them full with Four Roses whiskey. Now, there's some identification going on here. That stuff is brutal, drinking it warm. I don't think that's how you're supposed to drink it. Anyway, so I'm sitting there with 3 guys. Now, 2 guys. The 2 other guys that I'm with never became problem drinkers, never became alcoholic, anything like that. To my knowledge, I knew them for years. And here's the reaction they had to the alcohol. They drank about 2/3 of their glass, and they'd had enough. You ever drink with people that have enough when you're drinking out there? Isn't that terrible? You've had enough. Enough doesn't even make sense to an alcoholic. What is enough? There is never enough. You've had enough. Yeah, I gotta work tomorrow. I gotta go home. Go home? It's only 11 o'clock. Let's go to the city, Let's party. And that's the way I always was. But anyway, they had enough, and they sat back and they watched the show. Okay? Because I drank mine, I drank theirs, and I finished off the bottle. And I went into my first blackout, which, if anybody in here doesn't know what a blackout is, it's a whole period of time that you can't remember that you usually do very stupid things in. And they get to tell you about it the next day, with much amusement. Anyway, I got drunk. I went into a blackout. I trashed the house, and I passed out, and I woke up in a field, and not knowing what had happened. And I started to get one of those nuclear hangovers, the type of hangovers that are just, your first hangover, when you're just like, you're puking on yourself, you're just a mess. And, I was as sick as a dog. Now, what happened from that moment on was I started to plan when I was going to drink again. Now, why would I do that, you might ask, if it made me so sick? If eating a rutabaga would have made me that sick, I would have been able to stay away from rutabagas the rest of my life. I wouldn't need Rutabagas Anonymous. I wouldn't need to get a rutabaga-eating sponsor. I wouldn't have to make coffee, at rutabaga meetings. I would have a sufficient mental defense against the rutabaga. But what happened was, that scared kindergartner that was inside me, who was all just repressed and anxious and everything? Well, once I started drinking that Four Roses whiskey, that kindergartner disappeared. And all of a sudden, I was larger than life. I was fearless. I was funny. I was good looking. I was the cool guy around here. Instantly. In that bottle of Four Roses was all of that. There was dancing lessons in that bottle of Four Roses. You know what I'm saying? That Four Roses offered me everything I'd been looking for in life. All of a sudden, I found the tool to cope that I'd been looking for my whole life. All of a sudden, now I know how I can fit in, because all of you are always comfortable, and I'm always uncomfortable. That's really what I thought. I was comparing your outsides to my insides. So I start to plan how I'm going to drink. Now, I made a permanent decision, which I never broke, never to drink warm Four Roses whiskey again. If you put a glass in front of me right now, there'd be a Pavlovian retch response, from that first experience. But I discovered Boone's Farm apple wine. I discovered Budweiser. Yeah, Boone's Farm. There's a drink for you. Huh? Strawberry Hill. Yeah, there you go. Oh man. So I started to experiment with some of these things, and I recognized that, maybe with the beer and the wine, I wouldn't go into a blackout or cause trouble or trash houses. So right from the get-go, I'm like 14. I'm already planning when I'm going to get drunk the next time. Now, the drinking age was 21, so there was some logistical difficulties I had to overcome. Like, who was going to buy it? Where was I going to get it? Where was I going to drink it? But I started to plan all these drunks because I had found the elixir of life. It actually was the one thing that got rid of that fear. So I started to become preoccupied with alcohol. Where was I going to drink? I'm going out Friday night. Now, I come from a really smart family. I have a brother and sister. They're both college professor PhDs. My mother and father are both graduate level, Phi Beta Kappa. It's a ridiculously smart family. And as I start to become preoccupied with alcohol, I start to not pay attention to a lot of things in my life, like schoolwork and things like that, I ended up graduating second stupidest kid in my graduating class. There was a guy who beat me who couldn't read or write, I got like a D minus and graduated from high school. Now, I didn't recognize that there was a slow progression going on. I didn't recognize that the preoccupation with alcohol was, becoming an obsession. Somewhere along the line, you cross that line from preoccupation to obsession. And once you've crossed that line, you ain't going back with human willpower. You're not going to turn the corner and just decide to do the about face that Bill talks about. It's just not going to happen. And I don't know where that line was, because by the time I wanted to quit drinking, many years later, it was already way too late for me to be able to do it. But anyway, it never occurred to me. I never said to myself, I'm becoming preoccupied with alcohol. If I keep going this way, I might not get into the college of my choice. I didn't say that. You know what I said? You know what the alcoholic's war cry is? Who cares? Or leave me alone, or get off my back. It's none of your business. I'm not hurting anybody but myself. The alcoholic war cries. I wanted no part of anybody that wanted to interfere with the way I was living my life. And, it got bad. I got involved with a lot of things besides alcohol. I started drinking in the very late 60s. And my early drinking was in the 1970s. Do I need to tell you there were other things around in that period of time? No. I mean, there was all kinds of drugs. There'd be somebody with drugs at the smoking area in the morning, and I'd go, what was that? I didn't care. This one time, this guy brought in a bag of belladonna. They used to use that for alcoholism treatment. Now, belladonna is a poisonous weed that grows out in the field, and it has really bad hallucinogenic properties and stuff, right? So I remember, that's belladonna. Well, what is that? It's belladonna. I'll give you some. I ate a bunch of it. I ended up getting paranoid and going partially blind that day, And, it was temporary, but I remember going back to school the next day. Everybody was standing around going, hey, did you go blind too? It was crazy. And then, the same guy brings in a big sack of these pills. I go, what are those? He goes, they're Quaaludes. So I go, Quaaludes? I go, how many should you take? He goes, 3 or 4. Can you imagine? 3 or 4. For anybody that doesn't know what a Quaalude is like a 6-pack of beer in a pill form. So if you do 3 or 4 right away, it's like drinking a case of beer in 30 seconds. You know what I mean? It was ugly. It was ugly. I remember walking down the hallway, hanging onto the lockers like this. And there was like 70 of us that took 3 or 4 Quaaludes. The ambulance was in and out. I remember making a break. Finally in third period, this guy Harry, who'd been eating them, raises his hand. Harry's never raised his hand ever. This is history class, okay? He raises his hand. I go, oh no. Harry's like, Mr. Bush, the Mexican-American War reminds me of this Superman episode when he found the Mole Man. So he's relating the Mexican-American War to the Mole Man episode on Superman. I got to get out of here, This is too much. And I make a break for the woods. And I forget that the door I go out of faces the 400 wing. So like 900 of my peers get to see me try to make a break for the woods. Okay? I thought I was doing a good job. Right? It took me like 15 minutes to go 100 yards. I finally get out to the woods, and there's people out there holding on the trees. It was really, really ugly. And there was I had some really, really bad. I always took too much. I was always the guy that was out of control. And drinking was everywhere. Drinking was everywhere during this process. Drinking was the one constant. A lot of times I would use some of these things to enhance my drinking experience, prolong my drinking experience, manage my drinking experience, take away the hangover. But the one thing that was always constant was the alcohol. Now, if you're a blackout drinker and you don't care, you just want everybody to get off your back, a lot of things happen. I started crashing cars. And, I was always the final owner of every car I had. I had to ask my sponsor how to sell a car when I got sober. All I knew was take the title to the junk man. Take the title to the junk man. That's all I knew. I would get upset when I hit you if you had like a BMW. I remember running up to this guy and go, what the hell's the matter with you buying a car like this? This is like a $25,000 car. What kind of trouble this is going to be for me? I got a $100 car here. I'll just throw it away. I get another one. What are you thinking? It was like we have bizarre perspectives. Anyway, I crashed a lot of cars. I remember this. I remember this one time. I misjudged cutting across oncoming traffic. You know how it is. This was a time when I was doing Quaaludes and whiskey, and that interferes with your capacity to make judgments, supposedly. And I got T-boned and rolled down the road, and that was really ugly. I ended up escaping from the hospital, and that was bad. But I'll tell you the one story. This is the last DWI I had. Cops were always hassling me. All right, here's the last DWI. I get pulled over because I'm like in the wrong lane or something. He pulls me over. I am so drunk. He goes, license, registration, insurance card. I am so drunk. I'm in the glove compartment, struggling around. Finally, it's like 2 or 3 minutes are going, but finally the hell with this, and I grabbed the entire contents of the glove compartment and hand it to the cop. All right? There's maps and tissues and, pencils and combs and everything. And he's like, out of the car, please. So, gets me out of the car, and I remember, takes me to the police station. And I remember him doing the ABCs with me. I'm this close to a blackout. I was so drunk. I remember doing the ABCs, and I remember nailing the ABCs. Okay? I nailed them, okay? So, and they videotaped me and all this stuff. Now, So I get a lawyer the next day, and I go, I know I got the ABCs. We're going to fight this. We're going to fight this. So I hire a $1,500 attorney. That's a lot of money back in like 1982. I hire a $1,500 attorney, and he shows up. He's all suited up, and we're going to go to the police station and view the evidence. We need to see the tape. Has anybody in here ever seen your DUI tape? Did you need therapy after that, like I did? I was horrified. Yeah, I got the ABCs right. It was like this. And meanwhile, the $1,500 lawyer is like, he's got to act, he's $1,500, he's got to act proper, right? And this is a travesty. I'm like cringing. They've got me walking the line. And my arms are over here on the wall. And they're like, Mr. Schroeder, you're not supposed to have your arms on the wall, walking the line. I mean, it was horrible. It was just a debacle from hell. And I'm just cringing, and the cop who handed us the tape was cracking up, when he had it. They probably watching it during break, But here's the worst part. In the end, they go, okay, Mr. Schroeder, we're going to turn off the camera now. Is there anything you'd like to say before we shut the camera off? So I look at the camera, right, and I go like this. And the lawyer goes, bah! And he just starts laughing. He'd held it in check until then. He just, bah! He goes, if there was any chance at all of ever beating this, you just blah, blah. And I'm like, I guess we're going to plea this one, aren't we, Yes, we are. The cops are always hassling me. Oh, man. So there was all kinds of consequences and all kinds of crazy things, but the one constant was the alcohol solved my spiritual problem. The alcohol made me feel comfortable with myself and comfortable with my environment. So no matter what the consequences were happening out there, I had to overlook them, and I had to keep on going, and I had to keep drinking. Now, I ended up moving down to Florida. A friend, I'd taken a year off in between high school and nothing, just to kind of mellow out, and I started noticing that everybody was disappearing. These are my buddies, my party buddies. They're disappearing. They're getting married, or they're calming down, or they're getting jobs, or they're going off to college. And I didn't have my friends to drink anymore, so my drinking base is shrinking. And I decided maybe I should do something. And this guy comes home and he goes, man, I'm in college. And I go, well, where are you going? Where are you going? He goes, University of South Florida. Man, it's great. There's a bar in every campus, and all the drugs come through Key West. And I'm like, the application was in the mail that afternoon. I didn't even know what kind of college it was. Could have been a cheerleading college for all I know. And I end up down there. And here's a record. This has got to be a record. This is like a Doonesbury-esque thing. I spent 3.5 years and got 6 credits. I would take all these classes and then, oh man, they want me to do homework, It's like tests. And so I dropped the classes, and I got some really lousy jobs. I ended up with a wife somewhere in this. I had proposed to my girlfriend in a blackout, supposedly, and we ended up getting married. And she was a beautiful Al-anon, I swear. She was absolutely wonderful. She grew up in an alcoholic family. Mother, father, both alcoholics. All her brothers are alcoholics. Uncles, everybody's alcoholics. So, like, when she hooked up with me, it was like, home. You know what I mean? How can I be codependent today? And it was wonderful. It worked. She thought about me as much as I did. So that was my one requirement, You gotta be obsessed with me. So She's Catholic, okay? So guess what happens 9 months to the nanosecond after we get married? We have our daughter, okay? You could have set the atomic clock to this. And so here I am. I'm now a husband and a father. And I've got friends that don't even have names. They're like Weezer and Green Man, you know. These are like my partying buddies, you know, and she wanted all this unreasonable stuff. She wanted me to get a job and put insurance on the cars and, you know, come home at night, you know. And it was brutal for me, you know. And it wasn't really going very well. And, you know, a couple of things happened, a couple of car crashes, a couple of debacles, and she said, okay, I've had enough. I mean, you know, she had even had enough. She was like a black belt, unrecovered Al-anon, and she had had enough. And she ended up leaving and moving back to New Jersey, and that was some of the worst drinking of my life I spent in Tampa, Florida, somewhere around 1981, just drinking like you got no idea. I mean, some of the stuff I would come to in jail. And what the hell am I doing here? That's a bad feeling. You don't know why you're in jail. And I learned something really important. Don't wake up your bunkmate and ask him. You know what I mean? Sometimes they're cranky, you know, when you wake them up. He wasn't really interested in why I was in there, as a matter of fact. So I had to wait until I was in front of the judge to even know what I had done. What I had done was I had driven up on somebody's yard and run over their palmetto tree while they were outside pruning the rose bushes. And because I was in a 62 Buick LeSabre that I got for $100, the tree ripped right out of the ground and got caught under the car. And I drove off with this guy's tree. Now, he's one of those guys that really cares about his lawn. You ever see those people? They pick the weeds and they trim at like 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday or something. You know, one of those guys that like cares about the appearance of their lawn. You know, where do you get these people? So he was upset about the big hole in his yard that used to be his palmetto tree, and he called the police. Well, they found me about 20 blocks down the road, sleeping in the car with the tree still under the car. Cops always hassled me. It was my hair. Anyway, you know, this went on and on and on. Finally, you know, my scorecard was reading 0. And where do you go if the cops are after you, the people who want money are after you, you never showed up for community service, you know, the hospital bills are coming in, you don't have a job, you don't have any money. What do you usually do? If you're anything like me, you start to think that mom needs some help around the house, you know? So I moved back to New Jersey and I moved in. I was only going to stay for 8 years of like the worst drinking of my life. I burnt the house down twice. It was not pretty. You know, she's a wonderful woman. She just couldn't put me out on the street, you know, and I was just really bad. And, you know, progression. Alcohol is progressing. It's progressing. You know what I'm saying? It's just getting worse and worse and worse. But it gets worse slowly over the course of time. So like this month kind of feels like last month. It's a little worse. But every month that goes by, it gets worse. So it's getting bad. And I'm at a point, I talked earlier here this weekend about what it looked like, me drinking every day. You know, when the weekends would come, I would be so glad because I could drink round the clock. I would get drunk out of my mind, go into a blackout, pass out, come to, start drinking again, go into a blackout, pass out, come to. I could get drunk like 3 or 4 times in a weekend, and somewhere around Sunday afternoon, try to start pulling out of it because I knew I'd have to show up and be able to actually talk at work on Monday. You know, so it got really ugly, and, you know, there were very few friends left around, and, you know, I was doing really, really sad things. Anybody in here ever drunk and dial? You ever get on the phone, you know, and drunk, you know, really drunk, hey, I haven't talked to you since 3rd grade, but I just want to tell you I love you, you know, like, you come to the next morning, and you got these phone numbers, no, I didn't call him, oh. And it got to the point where I was so concerned, I started cutting the phone lines, you know? So I'm getting drunk. I know I'm going to go for the phone. I better cut the lines. So I cut the lines. The problem is I'm an electrician. Okay? So I'd get drunk, I'd want to call, I'd go put the lines back together. So it got to the point where I had to be tricky. I'd have to cut it like, here. It even got to the point where I was throwing ladders up onto the side of the house and cutting the phone lines as high as I could. Well, I'd put the ladder on top of a soapbox or something later when I'm drinking, then put them back there. Finally, you couldn't even hear the phone. There was so much static, right? So we had to call the phone repair guy. The phone repair guy comes out and he goes, "What the hell?" Because it looks like somebody cut your phone line in 35 places and Scotch taped it back together. So I'm standing there, I'm going, yeah, that's what I thought it was too. Oh, man. So it got really bad. I started to become violent. I started to answer the front door with handguns, because they were going to come get me or something. It'd be like a Girl Scout trying to sell cookies. It was just, it got decadent. It really got decadent.
All right, we're going to take a short break here for this very special announcement, and we'll come back with Chris S. and the rest of the story. Hey, everybody, check it out. It's the Monty Man from Take 12 Recovery Radio, and I am so excited to be welcoming Dr. Rob Kelly to the Take 12 Recovery Radio family for his show, The Rob Kelly Hour. Listen, Dr. Kelly has worked with thousands of people, including celebrities of film, music, and sports. And he has lectured at many high-profile universities and hospitals. And now, this world-renowned addiction specialist, well, he's coming to Take 12 Recovery Radio. So mark your calendars for Monday, March 22nd, for the debut show of the Rob Kelly Hour, right here at Take12Radio.com and all major podcasting platforms. It's the Rob Kelly Hour.
Hey guys, this is Richie Supa, and you are listening to Take12Radio.com, recovery talk and positive music.
This is the place. This is the place.
All right, welcome back to the show. You have tuned into the world's original recovery talk and recovery music radio station, Take 12 Recovery Radio, at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial. Now, we've been listening to the first half of Chris S.'s share, which I have affectionately titled The Face-Eating Demon. By the way, Chris S. and I produced two workshops, one called Walking Through the Big Book and the other Walking Through the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Both of these you can find and download for free at Take12Radio.com, and then click on the Recovery Workshops banner. Once there, you'll find both of those workshops. Just click on the links, and there they are for you. All right. Without further ado, here's the second half of this amazing share with our friend Chris S.
I'm not a stupid guy. I just did a lot of stupid things, and I'm not a bad guy. But I did do a lot of bad things. There was some really horrific stuff that went on. And I remember this one day, I batted around the idea of going to AA. As a matter of fact, I had somebody take me to an AA meeting in 1984. And he was a buddy of mine. I said, my drink is really getting bad. Take me to one of them A&A meetings. And I remember going to the AA meeting drunk out of my mind, which I thought was appropriate. Isn't everybody? I mean, I didn't know. So, I went into the meeting, and I remember sitting down, and I remember they said a little prayer, and then they passed the basket, and put the dollar in. What is this looking like to you, And, somebody shared, I had a little resentment today, and somebody else said, I got a resentment too. So I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what's going on. And at the end, everybody gets up, stands up, and holds my hand and says the Lord's Prayer. I got out of there so fast. I didn't come back for 6 years. 6 of the worst years of my life. This one guy grabbed me on the way out and talked to me about sponsorship. I used to race motorcycles. So the only thing I know about sponsorship is if you wear the guy's T-shirt, he'll give you gas money. So I'm like, buddy, I don't need gas money. I don't even have a license. I didn't know what he was talking about. You know what I mean? And it was brutal. But sometime around 1989, it had got my attention so bad. Here I am. I'm an electrician still, and I'm trying to put a ground screw in a ceiling fixture box. And it had gotten so bad that I actually had a 19-year-old kid who was in charge of me. I was 33. Okay, this 19-year-old kid, take care of Chris today. My boss would say. It was embarrassing. And I was trying to put this screw in an outlet box, and I kept dropping it. I mean, I was shaking so bad that it kept falling. And this 19-year-old kid was looking at me. You know how they look at you? And I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking, you lousy, good-for-nothing, no-account loser. Because the one thing that happens during obsessive drinking is you can hear people think at you. It's like this heightened sense that you get. So he's thinking this at me, and I just can't take it. It was really, really bad. So I called up this rehab that I had been to for outpatient to get one of my driver's licenses back, that I used to go to the outpatient drunk. I thought, doesn't everybody? And I used to critique the Father Martin movies. Anybody ever seen the Father Martin movies? Well, I was a big critic of the Father Martin movies, drunk and outpatient. And much to the consternation of my counselor, by the way, he didn't think that was very nice. But I'd be going, Father Martin doesn't know anything about me, and I'd go off on these tirades. They brought in, they didn't catch me with it, but they brought in a breathalyzer to the outpatient just to catch people like me afterward. But anyway, I'd gone through this, and I knew that there was a rehab that you could go to if you needed help. So I call them up and I say, I'm coming in. They're like, well, first of all, who are you? And so I jumped through the hoops, and I remember making the deal. And the next day I go in and I sign myself in. And I mean, I was absolutely shattered. They put me on Librium right away, and I desperately wanted to stay away from alcohol. I mean, for me to sign myself into rehab was pretty bad. But what happened? I talked a little bit about it. What happened was, I didn't participate enough in the recovery process. I didn't participate at all in the recovery process. I was fellowshipping, and I was outpatienting, and I was doing a lot of things, but I wasn't doing any of the spiritual work that one really needs to do if you've gone down the scale as far as I have with alcoholism. So I ended up drinking. Now picture this. This is Christmas at the Schroeder's, 1989, and I'm drinking whiskey, and I'm out of my mind, and for something pissed me off, and I got a resentment, you know how we do, and I got crazy, and I started waving around a .38 caliber handgun, saying, I'm going to kill all of you. My whole family's there, my mother, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, animals. I mean, and I'm going to kill all of you. And they didn't really feel comfortable with that. It wasn't the festive atmosphere they were looking for. So they picked up and they took their Christmas elsewhere, and that's when I ended up detoxing myself the final time and making that cry to God. God, please help me. Now, I start going to meetings. I'm going to meetings every night. I get a sponsor. God bless him, Phil W. God bless him. He's down in Florida now with like 25 years. 28 years. He's got a lot of time. He took me on, and I really tried to do everything that I thought was being expected of me in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, I'm going to meetings. It's 6 months, a year goes by. I'm just meeting service. I'm doing everything I can, and I am absolutely still completely out of my mind. I'm one big walk-in resentment. I'm a huge walk-in resentment. I would wake up in the morning, and the first thing that would click through my mind was, those bastards! You know what I mean? I was just a walking time bomb resentment. I had that self-centered fear. I had guilt, remorse over failed marriages, and my daughter. I can't see my daughter anymore. I mean, I've got all this terminal emotion going on in my life. It was absolutely horrific, and I'm hanging on. I'm doing all this fellowship stuff, and this guy, Radio Shack Mike, who kind of became friends with me, he was more fearless than some, decided to befriend me, and we were hanging out a little bit, going to some meetings, and he had tapes. He was a tape listener. He went to the New Age bookstores all the time. He was just filling his head with all this weird stuff. And he gave me a set of tapes one time. This is the first set he gave me, and they were affirmation tapes. And the point of the affirmation tape was to listen to it and then repeat the affirmations over and over again to try to get some positive self-esteem or something. So I remember standing in front of the mirror, unrecovered alcoholic, going, Chris, you're a wonderful guy. Chris, you're a wonderful guy. Chris, smashing everything. I'm not a wonderful guy. I'm a jerk. It really didn't work well on me, and looking back, trying to treat alcoholism with affirmation tapes is like trying to stop a semi with a cobweb, you know what I mean? So that didn't work, but he gave me another set of tapes. He goes, you're hardcore, dude. You'll like these. He didn't like them. And what they were an early set of the Joe and Charlie Big Book study, right? Now, picture this. I'm going to 13 meetings a week. I'm a treasurer here. I'm a secretary there. I'm driving people to meetings. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm going out to the diner. I'm lending AA's money. I mean, I'm going above and beyond, And and I start listening to these tapes, and this is what those tapes told me. This is what I heard. Chris, you're a fellowship demon. You're the pope of the fellowship. But you have no program because you're not working the exercises out of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. So you have no program. So when you go back out and drink, don't tell anybody that AA failed because you haven't even tried AA yet. Now, I had another resentment now because I thought, I was doing all this AA stuff. I was showing up. I was suiting up. 90 and 90, I did like 180 and 90. I mean, I was all over the place. And the other thing that I heard on this tape set, though, was about the unmanageability, about being restless, irritable, and discontented, about being prey to misery, depression, self-centered fear, guilt, remorse, shame, all that stuff. And it resonated with me. It pissed me off, but it resonated with me. So I got a resentment. I threw the tapes off to the side thinking, what do those people know? They're from Arkansas, But here's what happened. Internally, my alcoholism continued to get progressively worse. Internally. I wasn't drinking, but it didn't stop the progression of alcoholism. That scared kindergartner was getting more scared every day. Didn't matter how many meetings I was going to. Didn't matter how much coffee I was making. You know what I mean? And I had an incident whereby I found Mrs. Right for me. You ever do that in AA? This is like an early relationship, and I thought, wow, this is going to be great. One of the important things I learned was she actually has to think so too, for it to work. And we went out for about a month and a half, 2 months, and it ended up exploding like the Hindenburg, and I was absolutely crushed. I was absolutely crushed. And I remember showing up at my sponsor's house, and he didn't really have anything more for me. He said, "Did you turn it over?" Turn whatever, And so I went back home, and I was at another jumping off place. It was a sober bottom. I was in crisis. I mean, I was very, very close to drinking. And I remembered the tapes. And I pulled them off the shelf, and I started listening to them again. Only this time with an open big book and a pad and a pencil. And when Joe and Charlie said, well, this is an exercise, and this is how we do it, I actually did it. There was really nobody around my area that understood the recovery process when I got sober. It was oral tradition. It was, the typical discussion type group AA that you can find. And the first place I heard the recovery process was on these tapes. So I started going through these tapes. Something started to happen to me. I remember going to my sponsor with my 4-column inventory, my fear list, my harms to others, and he goes, what the hell is this? Where's your story? I mean, I couldn't even find somebody to listen to my fifth step who understood what a fifth step was supposed to be. I said, just let me read this, and he let me read it. And, I started to move on. I took amends seriously. That's not something that was going on a lot where I got sober either. I took that seriously. basically because I just didn't want to feel bad anymore. I mean, I felt emotionally so bad inside. I reached out for this because I had faith that what these guys were saying was true, that there could be a state called recovery where emotionally you would be placed in a position where you could be healed and you could be reasonably happy in every situation that happens in your life. And I kind of took that for granted, and I worked my way through this. Now, I was sponsoring a little bit at that time just because I was so active. People saw my activity and recognized it as good sobriety, their mistake. But anyway, and they were drinking on me. You ever have sponsors drink on you? Doesn't it make you look bad? Somebody will come up to me, is Harry yours? Do you know he's drinking and he's borrowing money and he's hitting on the women? Yeah, Harry's mine. I'll talk to him. These guys are making me look bad. So I decided, what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring them over to my house, and the way I went through the big book with these tapes, I'm going to do that with them. And this was somewhere around 1992 or 1993. And I start taking guys over at my house through the book. And this is where I started to learn a very important lesson. And the lesson basically was that the people who would make it through the fourth and the fifth step, the people who would make a really serious run at amends and then work with other people, every single one of them stayed sober. Every single one of them stayed sober. When they did what the text Alcoholics Anonymous says to do, every single one of them stayed sober. And the people that balked, the people that ran out of steam, they lost their enthusiasm for this and started to see me as an overreaction to their alcohol problem, and they went and found somebody else who all they asked him to do was be the cookie guy. Chris, man, you're pretty hardcore with all this stuff. I'm going with the cookie guy. Most of those people, I'd say almost all of those people are gone. Whether they drank or not, I don't know. I didn't follow them out there. But they're gone. I don't know what happened. I would probably hedge a bet that the majority of them did drink. But they didn't stay in AA. And what I started to see from this process was you have to put enough into the process of Alcoholics Anonymous to get enough back from Alcoholics Anonymous to be able to stay. Does that make any sense? It's all about your participation level. The more you participate, the more gifts you get back. And it's those gifts that you get back that allow you to stay. So the people who lost their enthusiasm for participation disappeared. I don't know where they are. Every once in a while, one of them will come back in, just blown up, just all hell is broken loose, one more debacle. I was okay for a while. Oh, that happens quite often. And but I'm telling you, it's a process that really works. What's it like now for me in my life? I went from being a bad electrician. I was a bad electrician. I would drill down into people's closets by mistake, and I'd go outside. Can we look in your closet? And the guy'd open up the doors, and there'd be like 30 suits covered with plaster, and one of them curled up where my drill bit caught it. I was forever blowing things up. I remember wiring a kitchen addition to the wrong panel. It was a timer panel, so we walked away from the job, and they called us back, and they go, "It's funny, the kitchen goes off. It's at 8 in the morning and comes on at 8 at night. That's unacceptable. We eat at 6." I'd hook the whole kitchen into the timer panel meter. I was forever doing just really, really stupid stuff. And I went from being a really bad electrician to, listen, here's what happens when you participate in the spiritual processes, when you start to do positive things in your life and start to do esteemable things in your life, positive things start to happen. There's a cause and effect in the universe that's very precise. You get back what you give. And as you sow, so shall ye reap. It's a cosmic spiritual principle, and it works. So things started to get better in my life, and I started to get better and better jobs. The last job that I had was last year was I was in charge of 80 New York City schools, the entire maintenance process, the outside contractors, the in-house crews, all the crazy contracting and stuff that goes on. I mean, you want to talk about a hectic job. You want to talk about some stress. Try sitting in a bunch of meetings with the New York City, Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens DOE managers. I mean, huger egos you cannot find. They are world class, and they do not lose. They do not lose an argument. They do not lose a position. And I was put in this job, which is about as stressful as you could possibly imagine, and I did it for a year, and I was okay with it. I did a good job with it. One thing that you learn in recovery is to say what you're going to do, and then do what you say you're going to do. Now, that sounds very simple, but we don't operate that way. We maneuver, it's inconvenient for us to actually follow through on what we said because situations have changed, so, they'll understand. I mean, we do that all the time. We break our word all the time. And I had gotten to the point where I really wanted to follow that spiritual principle, so they started to trust me. And if I said I was going to do something, I would do it, and if it became impossible, I would call them and tell them why it became impossible. I would keep them in the loop, and they really appreciated that. And I'm very efficient. There's one of the promises in the book is you'll become more efficient, and I became more efficient. Listen, my first day in sobriety, you wouldn't have put me in charge of a lemonade stand. You know what I mean? I'd have been embezzling the lemon money, and I'm telling you. So I'm in charge of millions and millions of dollars of budget on this job. And it was crazy. But I was just offered an opportunity to do something different, to actually work with an organization that one of their main purposes is to improve professional addictive illness treatment in the world. This organization is over in Lebanon right now, training the entire country in addictive illness treatment processes. They put on symposiums. They're really influential. It's some of the most influential people in addictive illness treatment, and they've asked me to be on their board and to actually work for the organization. You can't go from being a bad electrician to there. You can't. It's not possible unless you've got God working in your life. It's just too bizarre. It's just too bizarre. I mean, and I did a TV show for a while. I mean, I was a host of a TV show. I was host of a radio show that went to 80 stations, and it was on satellite. I've had the opportunity to do some really amazing things in my life. I get the opportunity to speak a lot of places, to come out to Minneapolis. I've never been to Minneapolis. I get a chance to come out to Minneapolis and meet a lot of you. The things that are falling into place in front of me are absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. When I first got sober, there was a discussion meeting, where these people would come in and they would complain about, I bought a new house and I can't sell my house. I'm running 2 mortgages I'm paying. Oh, and I would sit in the meeting going, 2 mortgages? What are you complaining about? How do you buy a house? You know what I mean? I got like $3. How the hell do you buy a house? You have a house and you're losing it and you're complaining? At least you had one, I've had the opportunity to own houses. I own cars that were manufactured during the current period of my sobriety, which is, that's something to shoot for, any of you new people, Oh, God. And I don't crash them. I can actually drive around at night. I have 0 points on my license. I've got an excellent credit rating. I mean, this is all ridiculous. I didn't even have credit when I came in. I didn't know what a credit card was. All of these things have been added on to me in my life. Now, it says spiritual recovery has to come before financial recovery. And I found that was true. I could not have handled a good job until I got involved in recovery. It just wouldn't have worked for me. It wouldn't have worked for me. Some of the experiences that I've had with some of my sponsees are unbelievable. One experience that is very interesting is there were some people that I had sponsored who were probably more narcotics addict than alcoholic. They qualified for AA because they had a serious drinking history, but they were really pretty much hardcore dope fiends. And they ended up going through the big book with me and getting sober, but they just didn't feel really connected in AA. So they were going to another fellowship, and in this other fellowship, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is not conference-approved literature, and I'm not here to argue that it should be. Every single fellowship has their own. It should be allowed to decide on their own conference-approved literature, their own process of recovery, their own requirements for membership and everything. Absolutely. But the problem was with these guys was that they had gotten their recovery experience with the book Alcoholics Anonymous, and they were having to go underground when they were sponsoring people in this other fellowship. They were having to say, "Listen, come on over to my house and we'll open up the big book. Just don't tell anybody." And so they got tired of this, and a series of events happened, and we all sat down one day and we decided to start a fellowship that would be conducive to people with hardcore drug problems. That the main focus of the fellowship was the recovery process in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And this group started about 5-6 years ago, called ANA, a National Association of Recovered Alcoholics and Addicts. And it's all about getting you right to the solution right away. And there's more than one requirement for membership. The other requirement for membership is a requirement to willingness to go through the steps with an ANA member. If you're not willing to go through the steps with an ANA member, there's the door. That's the other requirement. They don't have traditions per se, but there's been an amazing amount of success with this specific process. It started in Burnsville. I'm speaking in Copenhagen in November, and I'm by the literature table, and I'm talking to somebody, and I start talking about ANA, and all of a sudden, this girl chirps up, "Oh, I'm in ANA." I go, "What?" I go over there and I start to talk to her. It spread from America to Iceland to Scandinavia already, the ANA fellowship. And I'm sitting there, there's an ANA member that doesn't even know how it started or where it came from, who's been going through the steps. Recovery, the things that you do in recovery, it's like taking a rock and throwing it in the lake. You don't know where those ripples are going to go. You don't know what positive effect you're going to have on people's lives when you start working with them. You don't know what that you're going to do today that's going to be, something that's going to be really important in somebody else's life down the road. But I will tell you this, it's necessary to come in here and to get your own experience with recovery and then to try to carry the message. Some of the things, I could stand up here for another 3 hours and talk about some of the good things that are happening in my life. But all I want to do is witness to you, from my own experience, that there are unbelievable things are possible with this recovery process. I was a loser with a capital L. I was living at Mom's with no driver's license, nobody to date, no money, the clothes I had in high school. I was a loser with a capital L. And through no real, it wasn't through my own efforts that these things have happened. It's absolutely and definitely through the power of God, because no power could have brought me from being that loser to what the hell is going on in my life today. Nothing, I got the opportunity to start a home group. I've had the opportunity to carry the message in a number of different ways. I've got friends today. You have no idea. I'm not looking for any more friends. I've got too many friends. I love every one of them, but it's like my life is so full right now. You have to be really really careful about how you lay out the day, because there's so many good things that you can be a part of. There's so many great things that I can be a part of. I wish every single day had 80 hours in it. I mean, that's how much life I could live today. You know, if you're new here, you're just coming back, you're in treatment, and you know, your life isn't really where you feel it should be. You've got some problems with your family. You know, there's some people that misunderstand you. You've had some bad breaks and misunderstandings, and it's not really the drugs or the alcohol. It's other issues that you have. You know, your problem is different. You know, people just don't understand. And, you know, yeah, you're in trouble a lot, but, you know, it's not really you. You know, if you have any of those thoughts, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous, you know. That's the requirement for membership. You know what I mean? That's how you identify. We've all felt that way, and life will get better. The work isn't even that hard. The steps are not even that hard. They look hard. They look like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to get through them. Trust me, it's not that difficult. You know how long the steps take? They take about a week and 12 hours, or a month and 12 hours, or 2 years and 12 hours, or 7 years and 12 hours. You know, they take about 12 hours. You can't put 12 hours into something that's going to absolutely phenomenally change your life. Get serious, get a good sponsor, get a good spiritual advisor. Practice the steps, clean house, help God, help others, or trust God, help others. And be a part of this marvelous thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. That's all I got. Thanks.
And that's the share of Mr. Chris S. For more of Chris, don't forget to visit us at take12radio.com. Click on the Recovery Workshop banner towards the bottom of the page there. And then click on Walking Through the Big Book or Walking Through the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Lots of filet mignon for your meal of recovery. Listen, we're going to switch gears a little bit and bring to you our closing song. It's a little somber, something to really make you think, and I think something that you will want to share with others. Here is Richie Supa with his song, Busy Dying.
I'm an addict in recovery named Richie. This is my story. It's time I clean this place, pick my clothes up off the floor, maybe take a shower, 'cause I can't stand myself no more. I spend all my time wasted getting high. I'm always broke from all the dope I'm buying. And you can't call this living when you're busy dying. I don't go out that much. I hardly ever use the phone. Keep my shades pulled down, 'cause my disease wants me alone. Every day's the same, I just feed the pain, something that I've always been denying. And you can't call this living when you're busy dying. I keep doing stupid things no good for me, like picking at a scab all day until it bleeds. Over and over, it don't make no sense. all you give is more pain in the end. In the end. Another strung out night. I'm down as far as I can fall. Through my bloodshot eyes I see the writing on the wall. God, please help me stop. I'm down to my last shot. I'm all out of reasons to keep lying. And you can't call this living when it takes more than it's given. No, you can't call this living when you're busy dying. When you're busy dying.
Wow, that is some powerful lyrics and some powerful music. Mr. Richie Supa. Hey, listen, until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man reminding you that we have tons of archives of our shows, over 16 years worth of the best in recovery talk and positive music at take12radio.com on your internet dial. Until next time, I am wishing God's perfect serenity for you.
Come on in. Come on in.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
This is the place.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow, meow.
Woof, woof.